Welcome back to another episode of Two Chiefs, One Mic podcast. I'm Chief Mike Hawkins.
And I'm Scott Hughes, and welcome to what's closing in on our 20th episode here at the end of 2025. I am excited today. We have a phenomenal guest, Jessica Flores, who I feel like I've known for years through our LinkedIn connections. And Jessica, we were talking kind of before we started recording that I know you were in law enforcement and you've made it kind of like your job, if you will, now to kind of educate folks, especially in the wellness space. And really, and I think the don't get caught up in the identity of being a police officer 24/7, 365, that there's life outside of law enforcement and there's life after law enforcement. And I would appreciate, or I think our listeners would appreciate kind of hearing your story and, taking us through why you got into law enforcement. Obviously, I'm sure you'll touch on the challenges that females have anyhow get into this job, and then once you got in there, and then like I told you before when I asked you to come on the show, unlike a lot of podcasts, we are not scripted. We don't have notes. We just have a conversation. Yeah. So why don't you introduce yourself and tell us where you came from, what you're all about.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor. I am Jess Flores. I am from the Kansas City, Missouri area. Yes, there is a Kansas and a Missouri. I'm on the Missouri side, the right side of the state line. And I think I determined I wanted to be a cop at like 10 years old. And when my grandpa, the only other cop in my family, passed away 6 months after retiring from the job. Only knew he was a cop because if we went to shop at Walmart, he would be off duty and buying us snacks at the concession stand that they used to have. Or every Sunday, he would bring us the Sunday paper and donuts in his squad car, and we would get to play with the lights and all the things. I don't even know what type of car it was in the late 80s, but it was a car and it had lights on it, which was very cool. But when he died, it was heartbreaking. It was my first loss. And being at his funeral, seeing all of the cops there, he was a Marine Corps veteran as well. Happy birthday, Marines. That's the day we're recording this. So they were there. My uncle was a fire, I don't know what rank at the time, but in the fire department. So we had fire, police, and military. It was an insanely huge funeral. And while I have to look back to be able to know that that's the moment I realized that being part of something bigger than yourself is what mattered, and that's what he was. I didn't know it at 10 years old, but something sparked there. And in 1995, we also had things like the O.J. Simpson trial go awry, and my mom is a huge news watcher, so I got to see that whole trial unfold. We had the Oklahoma City bombing. We had all of these horrible events. I want to say Jonesboro, Arkansas school shooting was that year as well. So I saw all of these horrible things, and you always saw police or the first responders running toward it. And again, I'm so young, I don't know what that means, but I know that those guys are real heroes. Like they're somebody special. They're not the ones running away. So it was kind of planted then. And I can't remember what year it was, but I just said this on Medina Baumgart's podcast. I was also influenced by CSI when it was released and came out on TV. I thought that was the coolest thing ever because I wanted to be a detective. I wanted to speak for the victims that I had kept seeing on TV being so not represented and not getting the justice that I felt they deserve. Somehow in high school, a counselor thought that me going to school for biology was going to get me to be a detective. Real small school here in Missouri. I'm not sure what that was about, but I think it's because the whole CSI thing. Did a ride along at 18 in Kansas City, Missouri, and I never wanted to be a street cop. I had no desire to be a street cop. The detective was always at my heartstrings, but man, did I fall in love with patrol. Like they took me to the scene to meet the officers who had just been in a foot chase, just tased a guy. We went to a stabbing later. We went to a car chase later. It was just like, oh my God, this is a world that I don't know anything about, but I'm excited to do this. So I went to a couple more years of college and I hate being in school. I hate that forced structure of learning things that I don't feel like I'm going to need. So at 21, I went to the police academy 1 month after turning 21 at Kansas City, Missouri, started that fall. It's been 19 years now, which is crazy to say since I started. Then did patrol for about 4.5 years there. Part of that story and why my career ended there, I chose to leave that department 4.5 years in, 4.5 years on midnights in the worst part of the city, being shot at Halloween of 2009, which I just actually posted about the other day. And the way my department responded to that was more of the issue than the actual getting shot at. we were kind of used to people shooting off guns as we drove by or like in our area. Like that was nothing normal, oddly enough. And I could deal with the public hating me for the uniform I wore, but having my department not respond in a way that I thought was responsible or literally anybody I tell this to, that's what really stung. And I was like, why am I going to do this every night if I can't even, if you're not going to have my back? So I chose to leave. About a year out, I decided, nope, I'm still feeling pretty cold. I never got to be the detective that I signed up to be. So I went to another smaller department in our area, completely surrounded by Kansas City. It was 9 square miles of a city, and it was Kansas City all the way around it. So the geography, thankfully, was the same. The dirt bags were the same. Like it was just like, oh, okay, I'm just in a smaller, quote unquote, safer place. But when you're proactive, there's not a lot of safe in anything that you're doing. So I started there and I told the chief right away, I've done my time on patrol. I know I got to do it here, but my goal is detective. A year and a half later, got detective. A year and a half later, saw the need for some definite leadership and decided, you know what? I have that Kansas City, big city experience. The things that these guys freak out about, I don't even blink at, like that plus detective. Let me just see what happens. Let me just see. I got sergeant. I'm like, holy shit, this is cool, but also terrifying because there is no like setting you up for that process. There's no setting you up for that role. There was no training. There was no, what do you call it? Like break in or FTO process once you get it.
Yeah.
It's literally like,
Right.
hi, thanks, congratulations. Here's your midnight shift.
You're responsible
Good
now.
luck. You have no one else here. And I was like, okay, I can do this. I had a squad of like 6 months and under people, which was terrifying, because it felt like a lot of babysitting, which nobody wants a micromanager, but when you truly have brand new people and they don't yet know what they're doing, you kinda gotta be there and know what the heck is going on, and so that was interesting, and let's see, so that was December of 14, December of 15-ish, it got to a point I had been dealing with a nagging gun hand injury and I couldn't grab my gun anymore and, like, unholster it without severe pain, and I was like, "Okay." I had been wearing a brace on it, and I would just rip it off on the way to calls, like, so nobody out there could see that, "Oh, she's injured." After a while, and I couldn't do that anymore, I was like, "Probably should go to the doctor." The doctor was like, "You need
Was it a
sur."
work injury?
I would say yes, my department said no.
Gosh, sorry. See, that's why we should have a script.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, it's fine, I talk about it all the time. So, I believe it happened in the detective unit. I had never written and typed so much in my entire life. So, do I think that's what caused it? Absolutely. Was there any proof of that? No. So, go to the doctor, "Hey, 3 months, you'll be good as new." I'm like, "Okay, well, it's winter, why not? Let's go ahead and get this thing fixed." But 6 months went by and it was still no good. I asked for a second opinion at that time and was like, "Something's clearly not worked the way you said it was gonna work." Second opinion doctor said, "Hey, I can go back in there, but hands and wrists are really small, and if I go in there and I nick a nerve, you're losing all feeling in your hand." So, it was at that point that I had to make the decision that didn't feel like a decision, but I had to make the decision, do a surgery and maybe lose all feeling in your hand, or maybe it works and you're just all of a sudden better after all these months. But I was like, my now husband and I were like, I think another surgery is the answer. It's literally no better than it was prior. And the risk of losing all feeling in my hand just wasn't worth it. So I had to make the decision to turn in my resignation just 10 years into what I thought was going to be a 20 plus year career. Like I could be retired next year. It's crazy.
So the injury, I assume you were burning sick time,
So as soon as I told
donated time,
HR,
and all
like,
kinds
"Hey,
of
this is what the doctor
yeah.
said. He wants to put me in this immobilizer thing that just doesn't let my thumb move. So, like, light duty would be great." Of course, they're like, "I'm sorry, we have no light duty spots for you." And this is as a sergeant. So it was like another slap in the face from a department. I was like, okay, well, that's weird. Because I had a lot of cases I just left open when I left the detective unit, but hey, whatever. So it was when I told the doctor, like, hey, they're not going to let me work light duty. I'm having to take these 14 days of sick time and then short term disability and long-term disability and all the things. He was like, "Well, if it's already been 2 years that it's been bothering you, like, let's just do the surgery." And of course, I was like, "Yes, get me back to normal and back to the street. I've only been in this role for a year." And that's where that kinda ended.
So your dreams of becoming a police officer were about a decade, and then you're faced with this dilemma that hey, I can't go back to work. By the way, I've had both wrists done. I don't recommend it to anybody,
That
so I
sucks.
know what you're going through.
No, I've had one too with a bar outside of it and pins and screws in there. It was about
Yeah.
5 months of time off.
Yeah.
Wrist injuries are no
9
fun.
years later, I still can't bend it or grip the way I should.
Oof.
Wow. So, you're the your story, listen to your story minus the death of your grandfather, which I'm sorry you had to go through that. I know for me, I've told this story before. There's a picture of me as probably a 8 or 9 year old with Kool-Aid all around my mouth at a Kmart doing
Did you have
family
hair?
portraits.
Did you have hair back then too?
I had a little bit of hair back then, not a lot. And I had a badge clipped on me. I refused to take that badge off. So like it sounds like all I ever wanted to do was be a cop. And I hated school as well. I didn't get my college degree till I was well into my adulthood, and I barely passed the state final, but nonetheless, here we are. So it's interesting hearing your story. I'm thinking, sounds like me, sounds like me, sounds like me. So the difference, though, is Mike and I are still on the job, and our careers weren't kind of cut short. And like I said in the intro, that's kind of where you've kind of like quote unquote excelled, I guess, is getting. Well, before I get to there, through our contacts on social media and LinkedIn especially, and my travels around the country, and Mike conversation with him, there's a lot of folks who I think there's two different camps. I think there's a lot of people who want to get out but don't know how to get out. Then I think there's a lot of people who probably are on the fence about getting out, but they're unsure of what that looks like.
Yeah, who am I when I leave here, right? What am I going to be? A lot of people that is who they are. They identify when they wake up, when they go to bed, all day, and they're terrified of who they're going to be if they leave the agency.
That's definitely 2 camps, and I can tell you, when I was at that first agency, I mean, I was very young, but I lived, breathed, ate cop. I was a cop. I 1000% lost my identity in that role, and there's so much more to that story, but people can hear it on any podcast. But then my second department, I swore I would do things differently when I started there. I'm not having friends here, like, I'll work with these people, that's great. I'm having a life outside of this. I'm building this over here. And I thought I did a really good job. And then all of a sudden my career was taken from me and I was like, "Oh my God, I'm just a cop. What can I do? I don't know. I don't have a college degree and I can't do anything else. And these are my skills." And you're going through the job boards and who wants to do that job when I was
Yeah.
just out
Can't
there
do
arresting
anything else,
people or
but you're expected to do everything when you're working, right? You got to know everything, and then when you get out, what can I
you
do?
wear so many hats, you do so many things, you have so many skills. But I will be honest, when you're scrolling those job boards, they sure don't look exciting. They sure don't look like being a cop. And that's real hard to come to terms with. And in fact, for 2 years, I sat in a real big pity party, just feeling sorry for myself and taking meaningless, purposeless jobs that paid the bills because it was nice to be off long term disability. But it was waking up every day thinking, like, this can't be it. Like, I had a real good calling there. I had a purpose. I had a mission. This work means absolutely nothing to me. But what do I do? And so I sat in that for about 2 years, real miserable. And I wish I knew what sparked it, and I don't. I think maybe seeing my dad go through the same health issues that my grandpa did, right around the same age that he died. And I was like, well, I'm only half his age, so I should probably get off this couch and start doing something for myself and take back control of at least what I can control. And what I can control is my fitness and my nutrition. And I had tried Beachbody a couple of times before that, and life got in the way, and life is too hard to do workouts, and my wrist, and blah, blah, whatever excuse I could come up with. Well, for 2 years of my miserable pity party, I watched other people go out there and change their lives in 2 years. And I was like, must be nice. I had that burned out cop, like, everybody else can do this and that must be nice, but I can't. Well, finally I said, well, I can. And so I joined the third time for Beachbody. And 90 days later, I was a completely different human being inside and out. Like, my mind was a 180 from what it had been. I went from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset, and I didn't even know what that was. I read a book on it, and everybody should read it, by Carol Dweck. Incredible to learn about mindsets and how much it impacts your life.
There was no aha moment.
Not that I can think of, and I wish I could because everybody asks for it. I'm like, I just got sick of my own shit. That's what happened.
So what do you tell folks? So we talked about two different camps. What do you tell the folks that are really struggling with And maybe there's a third camp. Maybe there's people out there who think life is better outside law enforcement, but maybe they should stick with it. Maybe there's three camps. Let's start with one of them. What do you tell folks who were in your position where you had to get out, obviously for medical purposes, you had to get out, and you really struggled with that identity? Like, how did you, because I'm thinking, like, how did you stop wearing the affliction t-shirts and have everything with thin blue lines on it? And like,
Go to training with the sheepdog, everything. Yeah.
So
like at what, yeah,
to
go
be
ahead.
fair,
Sorry.
like, I never was that person. I never flew thin blue line stuff. I never wore thin blue line stuff. You would not know I was a cop off duty. When I was brand new, did I wear the police t-shirt and like, look at me, I'm a cop. I did yes, but that very quickly ended at that first department. You don't just like you don't want to be identified as that in Kansas City, Missouri. If you don't have to be, I would prefer to have the uniform and the gun. So I never fell into that trap. So that was nice. And having 8 months off on that long-term disability, I mean, that really allowed me to separate from being part of the culture, right? Like I was at home. Again, my now husband was a cop at the time, so I still kind of was involved in it. But I mean, I was away from it for so long that it just kind of naturally happened. But I also, for that 8 months, still didn't think it was gonna end. I still thought, "I'm going back. I'm going back." So I did nothing to prepare for what was next, and it's why I'm so passionate about telling people, "Hey, prepare today for what can happen tomorrow," because any one of us tomorrow could not have a job for whatever reason it is, and you don't wanna be caught with your pants down, for lack of a better term. You wanna be ready
Right.
to go for whatever that is, and so when you one, you have to have self-awareness. If you know that you're thinking, "I'm just a cop," which so many do, and they'll admit, "I'm thinking I'm just a cop." So, okay, great, first step. But now, what do we do to get underneath of that? Because you were someone before you were a cop, you're gonna be someone after, but, like, who are you? Let's get back down to your why. Let's get back down to your mission. Let's get back down to your purpose. What did you get into this job for, and how has that changed? When you can identify your why, everything changes. And even those who are like teeter tottering or do I want to get out? My first question to every single person is why. And if they start with their admin betrayal BS or whatever it is and blaming everybody but themselves, I tell them, no, we're going to go deeper than that because that's an easy out. Why do you want to leave law enforcement? And when they give me that answer or they choose to answer it themselves, we'll keep asking yourself why about 6 times and you'll get to the real reason why you want to leave law enforcement. Sometimes it has
Is
nothing
there
to do
a
with the job.
is there a number one answer? Are there the top three answers on the board that you hear on
Number
why they
one
want
would
to
be
get out?
admin.
Because as soon as you said admin, I thought that's probably going to be the number one answer. And I always just kind of roll my eyes and chuckle when I hear that because it's easy to always blame it on someone else instead of looking in the mirror. So I figured that was probably going to be one of the top answers. Outside of that, do you have like a top two or three that actually makes
I
sense?
would say
If that's
admin,
the
I
right
would
word.
say family, and I would say mental health. And what's crazy about those second two are those are things when I was in, nobody was saying. And even if it happened, you just all of a sudden showed up to work and somebody's not there. And you're like, what happened to so and so? And nobody had a word to say, nobody knew. And it was like, oh, okay. And so now to see people saying, I'm going to choose my family or I'm going to choose my mental health because I've seen what happens when I don't choose those two things. You know what? I used to think they were weak. And now I'm like, you know what? Good for you. This isn't meant to be a full 20-year career for everybody. For some people, yes. For some people, no. And if you're choosing to make sure you take care of yourself and your family, I'm not mad at you.
But I do think that is something that's changed dramatically over the last, I don't know, 10 years, maybe less. Scott, I don't know if you've seen it. Jessica, when do you think that really started to come into play? People realizing or accepting. And I think it's this new generation that we have that wants to be in law enforcement.
So, and a lot of people do say that. And for those first 6 years, I was not around law enforcement at all. Like other than my husband working in it, I ran so far away from law enforcement, and I think that's what truly allowed me to heal. I didn't come back into this space and talking to people until the end of 22, but really 2023. So only the past couple years. But I can tell you that a whole lot of people mention 2020 being like a turning point of this is not worth it. I'm not doing this. Like, and so
Especially in the
Well,
big cities.
yeah, and coming out of COVID, it changed a lot of things. So when you talk to these people, you run into them on the Next Shift podcast and what, Next Shift Academy? Is that what it is?
No,
Tell us a little bit
yeah, so I run
about
into him on
those.
LinkedIn. I don't know how the heck my
Okay.
LinkedIn went from basically 0 to where it is now with almost 18,000 people, but I was scared to show up over there.
You're on the Scott Hughes plan is what you're on. That's what it is.
She's talking to my people.
Yeah, I was actually scared to
Block her
show
off
up
my
on
page.
LinkedIn, and I had started on Instagram, just showing up and sharing about the transition, and then I was like, "Okay, I guess I'll try this LinkedIn thing. That seems to be where a lot of cops are." So, I went over there just sharing my story and just sharing things that I learned about the transition. And all of a sudden, it's snowballing. And it's not even necessarily because people will get this twisted with like vanity metrics of likes and shares and all. It's the DMs that were coming with every single post. And it was like, oh my God, like this is a gold mine of people who are suffering or struggling, we'll say, not suffering. Some are suffering, but a lot are struggling. And some are like, man, I really wish somebody would have said this stuff when I was going through this because they'd already been through it and gotten through it. And then it wasn't until so that was January of 23 I started showing up. March of 23 I decided, well, I've been sharing my story for like 6 months. Why don't I start sharing some of these other people's stories? Because clearly we're not alone. I thought I was alone. All these people thought they were alone. Let's share these and make sure the world knows, hey, you guys are not alone. So I started doing Zoom interviews and sharing them. And people complained because they had to click a link and watch it. I'm like, but you don't have to watch it. You could just listen. But okay. Hey, Jess, can I be on your podcast? Hey, Jess. I'm like, I don't have a podcast. I do Zoom interviews for God's sakes. So on Saturday, I created a podcast, and that was the Next Shift podcast. It launched June of 23, and there were lines. There have been lines for the 4 seasons that we're now in of people wanting to share their story. And I'm like, dude, this is great. Like, one, if I can give you the platform, let's do it. It started initially as like an interview and then a solo episode of things I've learned. And then in February of 24, when our good friend was killed in the line of duty, I didn't have it in me to show up for myself anymore. I had to just go straight on interviews. And so season 2 was mostly interviews. And then I slowly integrated back in because I'm like, I clearly have a lot to say. If you look at LinkedIn, I got a lot to say. So I need to share some of these on the podcast for people who aren't on social media. A lot of cops are not on social media. And so between LinkedIn and Instagram, that's where I typically find people. You mentioned Next Shift Academy. I did start that last September and I ended it in July for several reasons, but one of them being when you're asking people to do the hard work and look inside and do the work that gets you from this place of stuck, they don't want to do that. And I can't keep taking people's money if they're not going to do the work and get results. So I closed it down and now I'm working on yet more pivots to figure out what the heck we're going to do to help this population who definitely needs help. But man, they don't want to pay for it. They don't want to do the hard work. They feel very entitled. And I can say this because I was one of you. I was in that spot. I thought the world owed me everything when I lost my
Yeah,
career.
well, cops are cheap and they know everything already. So what help can you give anybody, right?
It's wild. And I was the person who literally for those 2 years I was miserable, strung like this information and this. I tried to get all the free I could and put it together and make it work. And it just wasn't working. It wasn't until I reached out and hired a coach and became a coach myself in that space that I was like, oh, you mean if you pay for something and you actually do the work they're telling you need to do, you can see a transformation. Holy crap. And so that's why I've gone down the path I've gone. I never meant to be in the wellness space, never meant to be in the mental health space. When I started the podcast and people just started sharing it, I was like, well, shit, I guess I'm in this space now. If they feel comfortable and safe enough to say these things to me and share them on a platform like this, then I guess I'm in this space.
And I think your point is they don't want to pay for it. They don't want to do it. So how do administrators, how do police chiefs get this help for them? And I think Scott has a real great idea that I'm trying to steal, and he brings somebody in for his people, right there. So there's no excuse. So I mean, there
Right.
are people out there doing good things.
So it's interesting because when I started noticing the individuals weren't going to do it, I was like, okay, maybe I shift and pivot to go into departments and being like, hey, this is something I provide. I've seen that groups do work, that cops in a group will actually speak to each other, which is great. And it gives them that sense of community. However, the few chiefs that I reached out to were telling me we only have a limited budget. We can't spend it on people who are leaving and things like that. And I was like, I think you're missing the point here because it's not those who are trying to leave. Every single person needs this information because tomorrow you might not have a job for whatever reason. And so if I can get that planted in their head and I can help them identify back to who they are as a human being and why they're doing this job, they're going to show up better for themselves, their families, their department, and their community. So it was very much that scarcity mindset of, if you teach these people about leaving, they're going to leave and I'm going to be screwed and I'm going to have to recruit more. And I already struggle with that. That's not the right attitude. Just FYI. I'm no chief, but that's not the right attitude. They're going to find the
Well,
information out here, whether you give it
that
or not.
that brings up a great point, Jess, and I appreciate you saying that, because as chiefs, and a lot of these listeners are chiefs or aspiring to be chiefs, we spend a lot of time, money, resources hiring people, recruiting, retention. The last thing we want to do is remove. And we are obviously working in an environment today that is unlike it was when Mike and I came on, and probably you to a degree. And that is, if you don't like it, because the chief wears an Ohio State sweatshirt on his podcast, you can leave and go work for another chief just like that. And they literally are leaving for reasons that back in the day you would say, "Are you nuts? Like, that's insane. You're leaving." So to that point, I think it's important for our listeners, the chiefs and the admin, who I know a lot of our followers are, to understand that point that you just made, and that is that don't view this as a threat. View this as a way to save people. So that Mike alluded to kind of what I do, and we've talked about this before. I think we have a very good, robust wellness program, mental health check-ins mandatory, weekly physical therapy or athletic trainer on site. We try to create a good morale, good culture. We're human, so you're not going to be happy 24/7, 365. But for the most part, I think we got a good thing going. What would you tell administrators or chiefs that they could do now to maybe prevent folks from wanting to leave, from your perspective as someone who has spoken to people who either have left or on the fence about leaving?
Don't think it can't happen to you, because I have worked with people from that patrol officer all the way up to chief. I've had them come to debrief and share. And it's crazy to see that every single person in that spectrum of rank is dealing with the same issues. So just remembering that you're a human, that these people are human, that we're not robots, and that it's not, like you said, a threat, to have people understand who they are, and what drives them and what motivates them. We are in a different type of policing. I couldn't do it today based on what I did before, but it is changing. And the only thing constant in policing is change, right? We have to learn to adapt. It's one of our greatest skills, is adapting on the fly in a second and doing what we need to do. But somehow when it's coming to this stuff, people are like butting up against it. Part of what I see is that old school mindset that I grew up with in policing of suck it up, buttercup, deal with your shit on your own time and move through it or leave, to today's people who are like, but we're demanding we have these resources and we're sick and tired of seeing boxes checked and it not being modeled from the top down. You cannot say this is mandatory and then, oh, but I don't need that. Or you can't be like, hey, we got all of this, and then you're never seen using it, or, you know, showcasing that it can actually help. A lot of times, I don't know either of you personally, but a lot of times people forget where they came from in this profession. They get to a certain rank and it's like, I made it. I don't have to worry about these guys anymore. I don't have to do that work anymore.
Mhm.
If you want to be there for your people, if you want to show them that you care about them as a person, as a human being, not just as an employee, you got to show up for them. You have
Do
to
you
be there.
think do you think if you had better leadership in your first agency, we'd be having this conversation right now?
You know what's really hard about that is it was such a big department.
Right.
I mean, we
Right.
had some incredible leaders. I just had this conversation earlier. Every leader, supervisor, I'll call them, good or bad, led me to where I am. So I wouldn't change a damn thing. I think it all has played out now, again, 9 years out now. So I can look back at this and be like, no, every single one of those steps happened the way it did. And to address way back at your first question, like being a female, I personally have no stories like most women of like this as a woman. I had a great experience as an officer, and I feel like anything I ever dealt with on the street was the older guys hazing new officers, and that, not hazing, that's a bad word, giving us a hard time
It's illegal.
and making us prove ourselves, because it wasn't just me. Like, I saw all of the new officers getting the exact same treatment. Even I would roll my eyes at some of the females and be like, "What the stop screaming," or "My God, what are you doing?" So, like, it was never like I didn't take it as a female thing. If it was, they're never gonna tell me that at this point, but I never felt like I had a harder time And I always had females led the academy. Females, I had a female sergeant and captain when I first got out on the street. Like, I've always had women in leadership in that department, and even the other department had a ton of females. So I've never had like a bad experience, I would say, because of that.
When you said you went to a smaller agency after, what size about was that
So
second
I
agency?
went from the 1,500-ish person department to like 50 something. And so
Because
very
we always
small.
Scott and I always try and gauge like what is an average size department, right? Because we talk to a lot of people that they can be 5 to 15 to 20 to 30, so you never know. So yeah, that's a cultural shock
Yeah,
for for sure.
it was definitely a culture shock, and I mean, one of the little townships right in Gladstone surrounded by them was, like, 1 officer and a chief. So, it was, like, a bunch of little departments with my bigger department of 50-ish people there. But, yeah, that was a culture shock for sure.
So you're doing great now. You've been out for a number of years. You've got your own podcast going on. You're doing some coaching. I heard you talk about. What else is going on where you're making a an impact? What's coming down the road?
Yeah, so a couple of things. The number one thing, though, and it is my favorite call every month, is the debrief call that I put together. That started somehow 2 years ago this month, but it is a Zoom. Current and former cops only come together on a Zoom. I go around the room. Thank God everybody has always been on camera and everybody has always shared, which is mind blowing. But who you are, where you're from, what brought you or keeps bringing you back to debrief, and then what do you have to share with the group, good or bad, doesn't matter. And then what do you need from the group? Because cops really suck at articulating things and they really suck at asking for things that they need. So I forced them on the call to do both of those things. And it's been eye opening. I'm typically the only female, which kind of blows my mind. I expected more females to be on board with getting better, but I guess not. And again, I would have 19 years in. Most of the people on the call are that or older, which again, we didn't talk about this stuff on the job. So it's very interesting to me to see the group that we have that shows up pretty consistently. And then a lot of people at that 20-year mark. And then we get some newer people in there. And the amount that each of them learn from each other, and to get the newbies on the call and they're like, I have felt so alone for so long, or I've taken something from every single one of you. I saw myself in every single one of you. And again, it's that range from patrol officer all the way up to chief I've had on there. And it's just wild to see that, oh, weird. We all deal with the same thing. That's crazy.
And the goal here is to save careers, right? I think that's the big takeaway again for the listeners is the goal isn't to get them to get out. The goal is to save them so that they can have a 25, 30-year career and not become disgruntled or toxic or
And I like to tell them that it's Stan Partlow had shared this backpack analogy a long time ago. Like, hey, if you get out of this job and you never unloaded the rocks out of your backpack, you're going to be screwed. And so that's kind of, it's not a critical incident. It's not therapy. It's not a replacement for either of those things, but it's a place to feel seen and heard with people who understand you, and a place to just let some of that shit out. And then again, create that longevity in your career. So many people do get it twisted. Like, you only work with people trying to leave. You know what? If I'm working with somebody and I can tell they still love this freaking job, they're just a little burned out, or maybe they're at the wrong department. Maybe you're at the wrong freaking department. That's a fact. If you still love this job and maybe a change in scenery, the grass is not always greener, just FYI. But if a change of scenery, maybe size of department, or maybe your priorities have shifted because now you have a family and you're like, don't really love this midnight big city thing. Like, I need something different. That's what we
Mhm.
work on. I care about your transformation, not your transition. So I've even started shifting to more of a, I care about you as a human being, and like, forget the uniform that you're wearing. Who are you and who is going to sustain this career and into whatever your next shift is? And then that's why I created, I don't know if you've seen it, Scott, the Mind Shift group on LinkedIn. I didn't know they had groups on LinkedIn. And finally I was like,
Mhm.
there's a group I can create here. And it's for anybody. It's not just cops, because I realized that I got the most help after my career when I allowed myself to be seen by regular people who had lived regular lives and had no idea what I had done as a cop. And we could challenge each other's perspectives. And I could see myself as a human again and not above anybody because I had been a cop or I was a cop. And it was very helpful. So we go in there and it is just 1 week a month. We're doing a challenge of some kind. Last month was personal branding. This month is networking. Next month is like decluttering and deleting shit that you don't need. And then every month we'll have a challenge, to help you start to grow, but it's a little thing. You don't have to do a whole lot of work. You don't even have to invest in yourself. You just got to show up and do it.
When is that? I'm sending my wife to the decluttering class.
No, I was going to say, don't turn this camera around. Oh my goodness. So, Jessica,
Cluttered mind
if
leads
we
to
had,
clutter.
yeah, if we had men and women in our departments or people watching this podcast, how would they find you? How would they reach out to you?
Yeah, the best
Where can
place
they
would just
find you?
be LinkedIn. I have a website, but I don't actually like use it. I hate it. LinkedIn is your best bet. And it's not a plug. I wish I got paid by them. Every single cop needs a LinkedIn. I don't care who you are. You need the
Yep,
LinkedIn. You
I
need to
agree.
start building a
100%.
network now when you don't need them before you do need them, because that will also be a struggle. But go there. There's a ton of resources at the link in my bio. They're free. You can sign up for debrief. You can get the podcast link, some other skills, things like that, or coaching call.
And how often do you publish the Next Shift podcast?
It is a weekly podcast, and we are just now like 7 episodes in this week, I think, of season 4. So we got a ways to go. They're each 30 episodes each season.
So you're a little ahead of us.
A little bit, but
Little
not
ahead of us,
much.
Scott. We got some catching up to do.
Well, Jess, listen, this has been awesome. We appreciate you sharing that story with us. I still believe, and people sometimes call me crazy, this is the best job in America. It's the hardest job in America, but it's the best job in America. And we have to have men and women out here willing to do this job, and it's not getting any easier. We know that. As we sit here today on the Marine Corps birthday, November 10th, 2025, we're at 82 police officers killed in line of duty. It's possible. We'll see what happens. It's possible. It could be the first year since 1943 that we've lost below 100 officers, which would be phenomenal if we can get there. So the work you're doing directly correlates to that because you're keeping people in the right space and the right headspace. And I always say, if you're out there on the streets and you're in the wrong headspace, then that's, you can
Dangerous.
set yourself up. Yeah, get yourself hurt or worse. So thanks for what you're doing. There's no doubt that you're not positively impacting folks. And if someone works for me and they are like, look, I'm just done, it's good having a place to send them instead of saying, well, hey, good luck to you, kid. You know what I mean? I think because they are human, they are part of our family, and this job isn't for everyone. It's a different world. I had a conversation with the chief last week who said, I'm at the point right now, I just want to get somebody for at least 5 years. If I can get someone for 5 years, I feel like that's a win. And I thought, man, I mean, we're just in different
Yeah,
times.
we are.
We're just in different times. So, well, we will put all of your contact information in the show notes. We'll put up on the screen so folks know how to get a hold of you. Mike, you want to take us home?
Well, Jessica, I appreciate it because it's these conversations, even for myself, Scott, as a chief, realizing it's not about just the employee. It's about what we can do as the chief for our employees. And I think sometimes that gets lost with the day-to-day, the bustle. It is people. This job is people. And listening to your story and talking to you, just resets that, makes you think you got to do your best to take care of your people because that's really all you have at the end. So I just want to thank you, and we will share your information, and hopefully you get some more business from this podcast and from some of our own employees as well. Jessica, anything else you want to say before you go?
Yes, just remind everybody that you are not alone and you do have a story. You have to own that story, though. And the minute you start to own that story and share it is when you actually start to feel better. Stop feeling like you're alone. Every single person out here has been through something similar. And if you just listen to this show, any other show, you will realize you're not alone. Stop trying to face it.
It's awesome.
All
Good.
right. Well, hey, thank you very much. And we'll look forward to seeing the Next Shift podcast out.
Thank you guys so much.
Thanks, Jess. All right. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
1,